As they continued walking and talking, a chariot of fire and the horses of fire separated the two of them. And Elijah ascended in a whirlwind into heaven. Welcome to the God Show. Welcome to the showing of God. The theological term is theophany. Theo, God. Phanon, showing, to show. So God showing God's self. Or the God show, as I like to say. So God shows God's self in these miraculous and awesome and unbelievable ways. A chariot of fire and horses of fire. I mean, seriously, if they came riding through here, wouldn't we be impressed? Right? The God show, right? The voices from heaven calling out. The God show. Now, the last time we have heard or seen God in this way in the Gospel of Mark was at the very beginning of Mark's Gospel. Do you remember when it was? When we last heard God's voice? Right at the very beginning. The baptism of Jesus. Right? And just as he was coming up out of the water, he saw the heavens torn apart and the Spirit descending like a dove on him. And a voice came from heaven, "You are my Son, the beloved. With you I am well pleased." God's voice. Theophany. Right? Now, from then, for the last 7 weeks and 8 chapters, here's what we've gotten. Healings, confronting evil, casting out demons, calling of the disciples, teaching in parables, sending the disciples, more healing, feeding people, walking on water, more healing, more feeding, right? And still, there seems to be a question about who Jesus is. Don't you think that's a little curious? I mean, shouldn't they know by now? These are the disciples. They were there when God spoke. But Jesus says, come on, we're going up to the mountain again. So they go up to the mountain. And of course, mountains are where you see God, right? So they go up to the mountain. And what happens? And he was transfigured before them. So he's up there with Peter, James, and John, and he is transfigured before them. The Greek says metamorph. So he's metamorphosized into something new. How? His clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them. The old text said, as no fuller on earth could bleach them, right? A transformation, a theophany. Does this remind anyone of any other place in the Bible? This idea of being white, transfigured? Old Testament students? Yes? Right? Moses goes up to get the 10 Commandments. He comes down, he has to wear a veil. They can't even look at him, right? So transfiguration, a powerful theophany of God. So here we are back, and then they're up there. He's been transformed. And Peter, of course, talks about doing the booths. But then another voice from heaven. This is my Son, the beloved. Listen to him. So, why? Well, the first reason is to give reliability to Jesus and to the story, right? So who is Jesus up there with? He's up there clearly with John, yeah, and with Peter, and with John, Peter, and James. Had to look it up. Yeah. Anyway, John, Peter, and James, they're up there together, right? But there are other people there. Who else? Moses and? Now, who are they? Just not two guys off the street, right? These weren't people just living on the mountain. Who are they? These are great patriarchs of the church, right? These are people who led the whole Hebrew nation out of slavery and bondage, and brought them to the promised land. This is Elijah, the one who said, don't worship Baal. That's going to take you in the wrong direction. Stick with Yahweh. You won't go wrong with Yahweh, right? The two most important people in the life and history of the Hebrews. And they're there. And what does God say about Jesus in their presence? Listen to him. He doesn't say, listen to Moses. Moses is going to tell Jesus what to say. He doesn't say, listen to Elijah, Moses. Jesus, get over there and listen to them. What he says is, they're all together? That's the one. Listen to him. So it's about the reliability of the story. It's about the identity of Jesus. Right? If there were ever any doubt for the apostles who Jesus is and what he represents, This should take away all question. God manifesting the theophany, saying, that's the one. Listen to him. The disciples have to get it right. At this point in Mark's story, it's important that the disciples get it right. It is also, interestingly enough, important for us. We're reading along in Mark's Gospel. If you have any question about who Jesus is, this is the time to figure it out. Because we're heading into a new place. Right? Let's get our act together now. Let's figure out who Jesus is, because we got to go somewhere. All right? That's what we're doing. Now, my question for you today is, how has God manifested in your life? Have you ever heard the voice of God out loud, plainly? Have you ever seen the flaming chariots and horses? Have you ever seen the presence of, has anyone ever been transfigured in your presence? Has this ever happened to you? It's amazing. I know nobody wants to talk out loud, but I heard, after the first service, I heard 2 stories of great epiphany, of great theophany. 2 stories where people you know, heard the voice of God. And it made a big difference in their life. One, well, I can't tell it to you right now, but I'll tell you sometime. I would be surprised if we don't leave here and share stories around pancakes of real experiences of God, which is somewhat surprising, because in my own life, I don't have those Hollywood special effects experiences. I don't drive down the road and hear God saying, hey, you're going the wrong way, or stop doing that, or start doing this. Right? I don't. If it happens for me at all, it is in the still small voice. It is when I can get myself quiet enough to maybe listen. In that moment, I believe I in fact have heard God leading me, perhaps even in words. But I have not heard these out loud experiences. Is that the way your life is? Do you hear God's voice plainly, or can you hear it at all? Sometimes, especially when I'm not with you, I wonder. Some nights I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, really? Really? Where are you? I'm looking. I'm waiting. Speak. Do you have those experiences as well? Sometimes I feel lost. Sometimes I feel very much alone. And is that any way to live? It's the reality of our lives, I think. Would that we all could have the mountaintop experience every day. Would that we all could go up to the mountain and live on the mountain, right? Where God is fully present and transfigured and Jesus is there. But that isn't the way it works. Many of us have the mountaintop experience, but we must leave the mountain. That's just the way it is. And we head off into a new place. Today marks a turning point in the church year, as well as Mark's Gospel. Today we leave Epiphany, the season where God has been revealed, into Lent. Right? The season when we prepare for Holy Week and Easter. And we leave this mountain only to find God on another mountain. We are heading to another mountain where God will be. But God is different there. God is quiet. In fact, God is silent. Jesus, hanging on the cross, cries out from the psalm, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And there, I think, names for all of us the despair and the dread mixed with the hope. Today, we learn the difference between Epiphany and Lent. We learn the difference between seeing God and needing God. They're two different things. When you can see God clearly, it is not so important to you to need God. But when God is not evident, when God is not speaking aloud or riding on flaming horses, that's a needing God. That's where we're headed, from one mountain to the next. At Epiphany, today, the Transfiguration, we see how far God is willing to go to teach us. As we head into Holy Week, and especially Good Friday, we will see how far God is willing to go in order to reach us.